Hello and welcome to Avocado Sprint 63 release meeting. And let me go straight to Trello, where we share our development process. So this sprint is called The Grid in the Sun. Check that movie, it's pretty awesome. And let's go bottom to top, what was delivered this sprint. So we have the use of new server for asset in Avocado Word plugin. This was actually done in previous sprint. We just failed to notice it. And basically it's just to use the correct links in Avocado Word as the server changed a couple of months ago. Then we have use major and minor numbers to find the right TTY on Fedora rel. This is an Avocado VT change, and basically we use /prod/consoles to detect which console should we write our logs to, and this is not occasionally this breaks, and we found out that using major and minor numbers instead of the names may improve the situation. So basically, we are looking into the problem, but currently we switched to using major minor numbers instead. So again, Avocado VT change. Another Avocado VT change is at elementary support for RISC-V. Basically, this is the open architecture which is being cooked for years, and now it made it into Avocado VT. So out of the box, you can, well, not out of the box, but you can download the image, and out of the box, you can use it with Avocado VT, even in TCG mode. So you don't really need the expensive development board, and you can still try some basic testing and see how it behaves. And hopefully we will get the real hardware to support it as well. Then we fixed a bug where Avocado crashed on systems without less. Basically, this was mainly on containers when our system did not had the less command installed. Just a basic fallback to system without paginator in case less is not installed. Then we fixed a bug where Avocado crashed when trying to attach broken characters into recorded standard output error or output. You may know this feature. Out of the box, Avocado can record your standard output error or combine output, and it can record it along with execution of the test. And when you execute the test second time or further, it after the test checks whether the output is the same as was before, as was recorded. And basically, the problem was with unprintable characters or some extra special characters, or even occasionally with binary data produced by some programs, because it was a design decision to use this as a text file, text output. So currently, we use text output. And in case we failed to recognize a character, it lacks in that character set or your default system character set. It will use XML replace, which means it will be slightly corrupted, but you won't lose the value. So you may, in case you had an issues with that before, the output was corrupted and occasionally even missing. So now you may need to re-record your outputs. So don't be surprised. But from now on, it should be more appropriate. Then we have added docs about videos, tests, repos, and plugins related to Avocado. We were aware of a couple of resources mentioning Avocado, and we attach them to our documentation. So check that out. Maybe there are some nice features you were not aware of, or people, or even plugins, because we noticed, for example, there is an Amazon plugin, there is a Microsoft Azure plugin for Avocado, etc., which do not live directly inside Avocado sources. Then we worked a bit on AExpect this sprint. We had an external contribution about accepting negative statuses, which is obviously not Linux specific, but on Windows, if you leverage Windows via AExpect, which is possible, it can occasionally return my negative status. So the regex was improved and it works well. Finally, we also had some time to attempt to clean it, and currently all sources of AExpect get this 10.0 score in Pylint, which obviously doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means it's standardized and does not contain any weird things that were not manually disabled, because we do disable occasionally some issues that are false positives, etc. This is not important to Avocado, except it is, because we intend to do something similar for Avocado as well. And this was basically a proof of concept that it is possible for smaller project, and hopefully we will achieve that on Avocado as well. If you want to learn anything about, like, if you want to learn how to code properly in Python, obviously you can help us and try to do similar stuff on Avocado. You'll like any contributions. Next, we have we had an issue asked by user to respect SSH config files while running tests on remote hosts. Basically, using the remote plugin or VM plugin, users may need to specify the proxy commands or even define custom hosts or some pass-through, etc. It turned out to be fairly simple because Fabric already supports that, and from now on we are parsing this file, and in case it exists, it will be reflected out of the box without any need to change anything. Then we also whitelisted filter by tags on remote runner, because by default Avocado supports lots of arguments, but not all of them are passed to the remote execution. Obviously, it's to protect us from the need of testing all kinds of combinations, basically to avoid the madness, as this support, the remote runner is a fairly simple plugin. And for more complex stuff, you may need to use something else, like use Jenkins slave directly instead of remote runner. But it works well. It supports those things, and some users depended on filter by text, so we added it, as well as filter by text include empty arguments. Again, if you need to add more, we can always whitelist other arguments as well. So feel free to raise issues or even contributions. Next, Clever fixed a bug. Perl softcheck misses test not run. Basically, this is internal thing on make check on Python 3. Some loading issues were reported as skips, therefore not changing the result to failure. But we do want to actually run all the tests, and in case they were not loadable, we want to fail the CI or the make check locally executed. So Clever addressed that by parsing the output. Then we allowed to tweak the verbosity of tab plugin. Again, on a user input, we actually started attaching the log file of every test to tab plugin using comment. But some tests produce quite long output, slowing down the execution, even because after each run there was a sync command issued, making it quite hard to use. Therefore, we changed the sync behavior to only sync after important events, like, okay, next test was logged, next text, the test case scenario was logged, etc. Then we do the sync, but not after every line. And second change was that this outpost is useful for some users. On the other hand, it increases the size of the result and makes duplicate messages in there. So by default, we disable it, and those users who want to have the combined output in tab as well, they can enable it by arguments. Then again, I expect changes. I expect received over past 3 or so months quite a lot of Python 3 related fixes, and now we declare we think it was the next stage. So Python 1.5 followed by 1.5.1 release were released. There is one change in behavior in terms of passing the open file descriptors. So now you have to specify it manually, which may affect your applications. But it's consistent along Python 3 and Python 2. Basically, even on Python 2, we enforce the Python 3 way of execution. And along to that, Kleber also contributed a functional test. So, and actually quite a lot of other self-tests were added recently. And that's it, what made it into release 63. We also have a couple of work in progresses. Some of them are with us for a longer time, and at least one of them we consider almost ready. So unless there is something seriously wrong with it, like some major breakage, we intend to include it. And that's the asset fetcher change, which is to allow assets with same file names to be fetched and cached. I think we discussed that previously. Basically, just to remember it, if you use asset fetcher, the self.fetch asset, and you ask it to fetch a foo whatever binary, foo whatever asset, it tries to download it. When it downloads it, it's fine. And the problem is when you try to download the foo asset as well from the different source, and if you don't specify the hash, it simply assumes it's the same one as the previous one based on the name. With this change, we meant to change it and basically not check just the file name, but also include the URL it's being downloaded from. So foo.py is not the same foo.py located in a different URL.
Yeah.
Kleber, do you want to say some more about this? Or?
Yeah, so basically it solves the implicit question, like it makes it more explicit when you want to fetch a file and you do not specify the hash. So different files with the same name from different locations will be treated as different. And different files from different locations with the same hash, if you do specify the hash, they will be treated the same. So it just makes things a little bit more straightforward, and it actually fixes a use case where you may be downloading completely different files, but they're hosted in, say, different URLs, or even the same base server with different directories, say for architectures, and the file name is the same. This is actually the example is the QEMU tests, in which you would download a VM Linux kernel, and the first one would be downloaded, and the second test, possibly using another architecture, would use the kernel that you had fetched before. So this is what this card is about.
Okay, great. By the way, if this gets accepted, there is a change of behavior in case you try to fetch, for example, let's say netperf from multiple different sources across different tests. It basically, if it was called the same, like netperf.gz or whatever, bz, uh, netperf.tar, let's say, if you downloaded it from a different source, it saw that netperf.tar exists and it used it, no matter whether it was from the same location. With this patch, it will download it again because it may be a different netperf.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, again, if you use the same location, same URL, it will use the one associated with that URL. So
Mm-hmm.
if you use 3 locations, you will download it maximally 3 times. And
if anybody out there is using this and knows of a better answer, a better solution,
yep.
just send
I
it,
mean,
please.
there is always we need to balance that somehow,
Yeah.
and requiring a hash file is not a solution for some
Mm-hmm.
tests.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems to be safer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's look at what what was worked on but didn't made it into the release. Is the attempt to attach log files on another install failures. This is again Avocado VT related. And basically, there's this test called another install with installs that kind of machine like Fedora, SUSE, Ubuntu, whatever you call it, it's there. And on Fedora, there, or not just on Fedora, but if the installation fails, the purpose of this is to attempt to log into the VM using serial console, and if it succeeds, try to fetch some useful log files from slash slash asterisk.logs or tmp logs or any logs it can find and attach it to sources, which could be useful. And basically, that's the first thing they ask you if you report a bug on Anaconda, for example. Next one is CIT varianter plugin. Kleber, do you want to tell more about this?
Yeah, so this is basically the work from the Prague University. We have turned it into a pull request for Avocado. Of course, we're giving it our own small touches, but I don't claim to be the author of that code. And then it's under review. Lukasz made a few points, and we are working on coming up with a V2 on that. It's now a functional plugin. What I mean is that the previous versions that we had were basically placeholders, skeletons of a plugin, and they did not generate real variants. But this version is actually capable of generating the combinatorial independent tests in the form of avocado variants. So the next development step after this, it's supposed to be the inclusion of constraints where you can put conditions on some variations only existing if some conditions are met. So we are slowly evolving to have a completely built-in combinatorial independent test implementation within Avocado.
Backed by the university. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And next we have asset fetcher allows us. Oh, we talked about it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So next one is Avocado Utils Archive at uncompress if unnecessarily. We talked about this before. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
it's like to simplify the most frequent usage of Utils Archive. Next, we have defaults to recursive. Again, this is with us for quite a while, and this sprint, I think it was developed almost like near to completion, but unfortunately, as it's quite a heavy impact change, uh, we want to do it probably early next sprint, so we have some time to detect possible issues. The goal of this is to not to require the Avocado recursive, but do it by default, which means introspect every single class in the Python source code and detect whether it inherits from Avocado test or not, which should give you basically the same behavior as, for example, unit test or other runners. On the contrary, it will have take some time to detect, because don't be scared, we are still using the safe loader, which means static analysis instead of loading the file, because that's the difference between unit tests and us. Unit test basically runs the code to discover tests. We don't run it, we just looked at it, poke around, and if we descend to Avocado test, we edit two tests.
We used to look at a microscope level. Now we're looking at possibly the atomic level.
Yep. Next one is bug non-ASCII characters break YAML to MOOCs. Sorry about this. I looked at the recursive by default, which took me too much time. This is another Python 3 and even Python 2 change. Basically, YAML file does not accept those kind of strings, and similarly, it does not treat bytes correctly, which means it's Python 3 and encoding issue. So don't use YAML to MOOCs to specify non-ASCII characters for now. Sorry. This one is related to this, basically to enable self-checks on YAML to MOOCs when this is ready. Next one is define and improve sources of test params. I don't think this was worked on this sprint, right? But
No,
you mean
we're still at the proof of concept level we were before.
So we will inform you about that probably next sprint. Next, we have two cards about picked, which is another variant of the combinatorial testing. And if I remember correctly, Clever, this is depending on upstream discussion how to treat UTF-16 correctly.
Yeah, basically there's a proposal on not trying to detect the encodings anymore, but whenever the encoding is different than a standard, say ASCII or UTF-8, then you would have to supply the encoding on the command line. And this is actually being worked on my side. So it's ongoing. We at least have a decision on how to go with that, but I still have to finish the implementation and propose it upstream.
Okay, cool. And related to this is the second card, which requires the self-test to pass, and self-test does not pass because of the encoding. Last card pending in work in progress is Avocado VT related, and it's to basically turn it into a proper Python package instead of the current implementation, which basically creates files where it shouldn't create it and touch locations that it's not supposed to touch. So this is pending on my side because I noticed we don't also treat etc files, like the config files, and I explored ways to actually do that because this is a plugin and this other plugin should include some configuration files to a different plugin, right, to Avocado itself. So yeah, looking for ways to do it, which slowed down a bit the development, but hopefully I meant to continue on the next sprint. So that's it. That made it to Avocado VT63. And now let's move to second part of this meeting, which is the sprint number 64 planning. So Kleber, do you have the name already?
I do have the name. Let me put it here.
Okay, so in the meantime, let's just go through. Okay, we have it. The man who would be king. Okay. Looking forward for the sprint description. Let's start with the backlog. Improved timeout handling for sudo equal true processes. This actually was reported by Amos, and he noticed that on our process library allows you to run things under sudo by sudo equal true, but in case it timeouts and the process is executed with sudo, it's not able to kill it because obviously it's not sudo
Privileged to
privileged.
kill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to work on this and probably attempt to tackle it if possible, because obviously if the user
Mhm.
does not have passwordless sudo for kill command, we won't be able to do anything with it. But at
Mhm.
least he will get a notice. Next, we have RPM lint to check if which warnings can be fixed. Basically, there are some warnings in our RPMs, and we want to ignore some because they are false positives, and or properly treat them if possible. Next, we have Python 3 fix Avocado utils partition. This may be already fixed with the changes we did, Python 3 changes we did, but let's just double check. Then we have downloading files should print information such as file size. Kleber, do you want to introduce it or?
Yeah, so we just noticed that when using the download utility functions we have, sometimes we have no clue about what file was actually downloaded, because sometimes a given URL, it's actually a link to a different location. That happens, for instance, when installing um, virtual machines out of
Like daily builds,
distribution.
right?
Yeah. So it makes sense to at least try to get some information and save that. So file size, maybe by doing a head on the file, HTTP head request, we can get more information. But file size would be
Okay,
first step.
will be good. Then we have the cloud init util library. Yeah, I mean the VM image library uses some of it, so let's turn it into a plugin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And allow some cloud init modifications. Simplify it at least from Avocado.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Avocado check PR sh unable to post the commit status. Yeah, I promised Kleber to look at it because it works for me and doesn't work for Kleber. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you'll find a solution. But unless you're reviewing, you are not impacted. On the other hand, if you do want to check it, just check contrib scripts, Avocado check PR, and try to set it. Maybe you will give us some hints. Uh, it's funny. Uh, Test loader adapt implementation to the new plugin infrastructure architectures. Basically, the loaders were plugins a long time before we brought the stevedore and the new way of handling plugins, and it kept the way until now. So obviously, as we have the plugins infrastructure, we would like to adapt it for it as well. So it's basically internal refactoring. Then we have obsolete get CPU arch and add two functions instead of it consistent returns. This is with us for quite a while, so I don't think we need to introduce it, but the get CPU arch is used for two different purposes, and we would like to unify it and probably obsolete it and create two other functions that will respect the two different use cases. And last one is the long outstanding bug writing to standard output and standard error, which is not being fixed for a long time because it requires deeper cuts in Avocado internals. And uh, yeah, we wish to fix it, but there was no time to tackle that.
Yeah, it's at this point it's kind of this theoretical bug, but we haven't been getting complaints and reports, and like Lukash said, it requires quite deep changes to Avocado, so it's not being tackled so far.
Okay, so I guess this is it, right?
Yes, sir.
So, uh, as usual, feel free to send pull requests, feel free to send issues, and vote on Trello for things that are higher priority for you, because we may reshuffle things and include it earlier. And I hope Avocado works well for you. So
Stay tuned and wait for the announcement of the release on the Avocado Devel mailing list.
okay, so see you in a month.
See ya.
And but hey, one more thing. I'll be traveling to FoodCon and in Dresden next month. So if you're around Dresden at that time, stop by. Okay, bye.
For all your avocado needs.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right. Take care.
Bye bye.